What is going on, my friends? Hank here, and today we're going to cover a much requested topic: 8th Air Force aircraft markings from World War II. If you've ever been watching a World War II documentary or a movie and wondered what the letter codes mean on the side of a B-17 or a P-47 Thunderbolt, well, we're going to learn right now. A lot of you guys enjoyed my Luftwaffe markings explained video and thought that was complicated, and oh boy, buckle up, because this one gets pretty wild. So grab yourself a beverage, get cozy. Let's hop right into it. Okay, so before we dive into our markings analysis, we just need to cover a few quick points to anchor our discussion here. Our focus today will be on the 8th Air Force, the major US Army Air Force unit operating out of the UK and fighting over occupied Europe during World War II. There were many other USAAF, US Marine Corps, and US Navy units fighting all over the world, of course, but for this video, we're going to keep it focused on just the fighters and bombers of the 8th. We'll be discussing two categories of aircraft today. First, the 8th's heavy bombers, which were the biggest four-engine long-range bombers that the US had available at the time. The two main types were the B-17 Flying Fortress and the B-24 Liberator. And on the fighter side of things, our scope will include the P-51 Mustang, the P-47 Thunderbolt, and the P-38 Lightning. Alright, so the smallest independent combat unit of the 8th Air Force's bomber organization was the Heavy Bombardment Squadron. These were usually made up of around 18 aircraft, usually all B-17s or all B-24s for logistics' sake, and each aircrew, the guys actually doing the fighting up in the air, was 10 men, give or take one depending on the mission. So a bomb squadron is around 18 bombers and 180 crewmen. And each bombardment squadron was lumped into a bombardment group. There were usually 4 squadrons to a group. And a bombardment group would usually have its own home airbase, so we're looking at around 72 aircraft and just over 7 air crewmen all in one spot. Now stick with me here. If we keep zooming out, the bombardment groups were organized into bombardment wings, usually 3 or 4 groups to a wing, so that's going to be around 15 squadrons per wing. Now throw 4 or 5 of those bombardment wings together, and you've got yourself an air division. Now you're probably thinking, how do you organize all that? Well, that's what the tactical markings are for. Because later in the war, the 8th Air Force was running up to 1,000 bomber raids over Germany. That's 1,000 planes all up in the sky trying to stay with their units and stay on mission. And to do that, they needed a system of visual cues that were easy for the crews to see up in the skies over Europe. So you could look out your window, see the plane next to you, and know exactly what squadron, what group, and what division it belonged to. So before we look at our actual markings, let's recap our hierarchy. We've got Bomber Command, then our Air Division, our Bombardment Wing, Bombardment Groups, Squadrons, and then individual ships or aircraft. Now we're looking at some actual markings. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. First up, on our tail, we're always going to have a registration number. That's the unique ID number assigned to a particular aircraft, regardless of the unit it's assigned to. This isn't going to ever change. Now at our highest level, the Air Division level, we're going to have a shape on our bomber's tail. We're going to get into specifics in just a second, but that shape denotes the air division that an aircraft belongs to. And inside that shape is going to be a big letter. And that letter denotes the bombardment group that the aircraft belongs to. So just with this one shape, we can see what division and what group the ship belongs to at a glance. Moving up on the fuselage, there's going to be a 2-digit alphanumeric code here. And that's going to be our squadron code. So our tail shape and the letter tell us the group and division, and the code tells us the squadron. And then paired with that 2-digit code, we're going to have a single letter that'll be separate on the fuselage, under the registration number on the tail, or usually in both spots. And that letter is going to tell us which individual ship we're looking at. So this would be ship A of whatever squadron it belongs to. So pretty complicated, I know. There's a lot going on here, but we're going to walk through each of these slowly to help make sense of it all. First up, let's tackle our air division markers. There were 3 air divisions in the 8th Air Force, the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. Easy enough. Ships of the 1st Air Division will always be marked with a triangle, the 2nd with a square, and the 3rd with a circle. And these shapes live in one of 2 places. The first spot is the tail here, and worth noting, the 1st and 3rd Air Divisions pretty much exclusively used B-17s by 1944, whereas the 2nd Air Division was pretty much entirely kitted out with B-24s. And in addition to that tail shape, you're also going to see that same shape mirrored on the upper surface of the right wing. So our 3 basic shapes here will tell a crewman at a quick glance what division an aircraft belongs to. Easy enough. Now, let's keep diving in. We've learned that there would be a big letter inside the air division shape, and that letter would tell us what bombardment group an aircraft belonged to. Now, albeit there's not a lot of rhyme or reason here. As you can see, the 1st Air Division isn't made up of the 1st Bomb Group, the 2nd Bomb Group, etc., etc. Unfortunately, no. We've got the 91st Bomb Group, the 92nd Bomb Group, the 303rd Bomb Group, the 305th Bomb Group, yada yada yada. Why? Well, the USAAF sort of had to figure this whole long-range bombing thing out as they went. Organizational elements shifted and grew, and things, inevitably get messy. Think of it like New York and Boston. If you've seen my Luftwaffe video, the Luftwaffe's organizational structure was super simple. You've got a fighter wing, you've got groups 1 through 4 within the wing, and numbered squadrons 1 through 12 within each group. New York's got big old numbered streets in ascending order, easy to figure out where you are. Now, Boston, my sweet Boston, is kind of like the 8th Air Force here. We just figured it out as we went along. Complete shite show. Pardon my French. Anyway, back to it. Here are all your 1st Air Division bombardment groups and their individual letters, each contained within our 1st Air Division triangle. Our 2nd Air Division has the same thing going on, but this time we've got circles, of course. Worth noting, several of our letters are going to repeat. So Circle A here, as we'd call it, denotes the 44th Bomb Group of the 2nd Air Division, while Triangle A denotes the 91st Bomb Group of the 1st Air Division. And if we pop over to the 3rd Air Division, we're going to get the same deal going on with our big old Division 3 squares. Okay, you got that? Good, because now we're going to throw another wrench in the system here. Fighters. Each air division in the 8th Bomber Command had an attached fighter wing for escort duties, among other things. And those fighters didn't follow the same marking rules as the bombers. Because of course not, why would they? The 67th Fighter Wing, for example, was appended to the 1st Air Division, and each of its 5 fighter groups got its own unique nose markings for identification. The 20th, on the left here, had this prison bar scheme on the nose. The 352nd had blue noses, the so-called blue nose bastards. The 356th had this striking purple and blue check that you see in the center here, while the 359th had green noses. The 364th, on our right here, had yellow and red checked noses. The 2nd and 3rd Air Divisions likewise had attached fighter wings, namely the 65th for the 2nd and the 66th for the 3rd. I won't go into the markings for each one right now, but I'll leave some example shots here for your reference. And if it wasn't clear already in this video, you're probably going to want to save this and review it again later. You've probably got a better memory than I do, but I know this is a lot for anybody. Alright, so we know our 3 air divisions now, right? So here's the 1st Air Division at its most organized high-level view. 4 bomb wings of 3 bomb groups apiece, each group has its own letter, and they all share the division triangle. And attached to them, they get their own fighter wing for support, the 64th, with its 5 fighter groups. The 2nd Air Division is similar, but it's a little bigger. We've got 5 bomb wings and the 65th Fighter Wing as support. And then finally, we've got the 3rd Air Division, 4 bomb wings, and the 66th Fighter Wing for support. Now, if you can stretch your mind way back to when we were looking at our basic aircraft markings, you'll remember we mentioned these Squadron Codes. Now, I could lie to you and say there was an easy-to-remember formula for what 2-letter code belongs to each squadron, but there 100% is not. So, here you go. I did the homework for you and made a nice, clean little chart. Here is the 1st Air Division. Looking at our first line, for example, we've got Bomb Squadron 322 of the 91st Bomb Group. And the aircraft in that squadron have fuselage code LG. The next one down, the 323rd Bomb Squadron of the 91st Bomb Group, has fuselage code OR. Now, we're obviously not going to go through all of these, but I'll show the charts like this for each air division now, and I'll give you a second to check them out. I'm also going to flash up the individual squadrons and squad fuselage codes for the fighter wings assigned to the 8th Air Force, so you can review those as well. Once again, I'd recommend hitting that little save button below the video so you can check this out later. Okay, so the last thing we have to learn today are a couple of helpful little tricks about timelines, and these can help you identify the age of a picture or a video you might see featuring some 8th Air Force aircraft. First things first, the 8th arrives and starts operations in the UK in the summer of 1942, And at that time, 8th Bomber Command is still small enough that they've only got these yellow registration numbers on the tails of their aircraft. That's it. But by the winter of 42, the 8th starts incorporating the fuselage codes that we talked about to help these crews visually identify their units while they're out on a mission. And by the summer of 43, the 8th has grown even more. We've got multiple air divisions, dozens and dozens of bombardment groups, and the 8th officially incorporates the tail divisional shapes and group letters to work alongside those fuselage codes. Now, this is all fine and dandy, but even these tail shapes and codes are only really distinguishable up to about a mile away in good conditions. So the boys of the 2nd Air Division had come up with an idea. In the spring of 43, they start color coding their vertical stabilizers. The tail shapes go away, and instead you get a unique color pattern for each group. The tail shape does stay, however, on the upper surface of the wing. The 1st Air Division likes the idea as well, and by the fall of 1943, they're doing the same thing. Color pops on the tail and wings, but they've also kept that divisional shape and group letter on the tail. And then by the winter of 1944, the 3rd Air Division goes completely off the rails and starts painting these huge multicolored group patterns all over the empennage and wings of their aircraft. And part of the reason the 3rd did this is because by February of 1944, the USAAF decided that they didn't need to paint their aircraft with camouflage anymore. The 8th largely had air superiority, if not air supremacy, over much of Western Europe, and painting a whole B-17 with olive drab paint added hundreds of unnecessary pounds to the aircraft. So by the spring of 1944, away goes the olive drab scheme on the B-17s and B-24s of the 8th, and in come the circus of group colors that you see before you now. And instead of walking through each color code, I'm going to give you this. Our same fuselage code charts from before, but this time with a little color reference added. Feel free to pause the video here and check these out as you like. And to wrap up today, I'll leave you with one last thing. The USAAF Roundel, the big star on the fuselage and wings of all 8th Air Force aircraft, changed a little bit over the years, and depending on what it looks like in a photo, you can pretty easily date an image. The meatball roundel, as it's called, with the big red dot in the middle, was used from the summer of 1919 through to May of 1942. So you'll see that on your earliest aircraft in service in the ETO. By 1942, when hostilities are ramping up in the Pacific, the USAAF drops the red dot in the middle of the star, so not as to confuse Allied aircraft with their Japanese foes. And this new basic white star roundel is active from May of 42 through to June of the following year. In June of 1943, the 8th decides to add a nice bar of white and a pop of red all around the roundel. This is one of my personal favorites, other than the meatball, perhaps. But that red outline roundel only lasts a few months because in August of 43, the roundel is standardized with a white bar and a blue outline instead of the red. And from 1943 on until the end of the war, that blue star and bar roundel is the one you'll see on all USAAF aircraft. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing right here to the channel. We've got a nice balance of nerdy World War II history content like this, as well as all sorts of scale modeling tips and tricks if you're interested in making some small-scale versions of the aircraft we learned about today for your home or office. Well, that is our show today. Until next time, my friends, be well, happy building, cheers.